Please, just review us, please.
The internet, our current frontier. These are the episodes of the podcast Let's Rewatch, our continuing mission to watch strange old movies to see if they're still any good or if we just remember them that way. To boldly judge because millennials do that sort of thing. Hi, I'm Nick.
I'm Bret.
I'm Sam.
I'm Ash.
And we've got a guest with us this time. His name is Benj Goehner. Welcome, Benj.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Benj is a stand-up comedian, writer, actor.
All those things, yes.
Excellent. So I think we'll get a little taste of your humor here as we go through our show.
You left off reformed trekkie.
Reformed? Why reformed?
I do love it. I just, there was a time when I was much more passionate about it than I am now. But
Okay.
that's why I'm interested to go back and see First Contact. And
What if this is the thing that kicks off your addiction again?
oh no,
Yeah.
we're really playing with fire here, folks.
This is important information, and I'm going to leverage that. So you've grown up with Star Trek. You
Yes.
loved it in your youth.
My first brush with Star Trek was watching the Arena episode at Vasquez Rocks,
Oh yeah.
Kirk fighting the Gorn and hiding
Yeah.
behind the couch because the babysitter put it on. That is my first Star
I
Trek memory.
really want to go out to Vasquez Rock. It's super close.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
If we ever need a desert landscape for a project we're working on, we need to go out to Vasquez.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
multi-purpose.
Yeah. So as you might guess, for this episode, we're going to be watching a Star Trek movie, but we're not going to start from the beginning. We're going to be watching Star Trek First Contact from 1996. This is the 8th Star Trek movie and the second movie with the Next Generation cast.
It took them 8 movies to make First Contact.
It did indeed.
That's a lot of movies.
Yeah.
But those other ones don't count. This is the First Contact.
This is it.
And this one is directed by Jonathan Frakes, which actually continues a long tradition of cast members eventually directing episodes or full-length movies. I know that Shatner and Nimoy directed a couple movies. Frakes directed several episodes. I think he became a very good director. So, Ash,
Yes.
you don't know much about Star
I'm
Trek.
the odd man out. Is
Okay.
Benedict Cumberbatch in this one?
You wish.
Have you seen the Cumberbatch movie? Have you seen any of the movies?
Yeah, I saw the first 2 new ones, but I haven't seen the most recent new
Okay.
one.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
So we'll in Star Trek parlance, we'll refer to that as the Kelvin timeline,
Okay.
which is a completely different timeline of stories.
Oh, really?
So-
Weren't they remaking? Wasn't it I heard that it was either episodes or movies that they had made before that they remade.
Well, yeah. So in the Kelvin timeline, they're basically in a different. They've rebooted certain history, so
Okay.
they can move in a different direction, and they can tell stories that are kind of similar to stories we've already seen because they're in a different reality at this point.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
Cumberbatch's character is a very, very famous character from a different Star Trek movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the only Star Trek movies I've seen.
Okay, so Brett and Sam, you've seen a lot of TV Star Trek, but maybe
Yes.
not so many movies.
Yeah, we're closing in on watching the end of all of TV Star Trek.
Okay.
I'm not ready for it to be over.
Well, Discovery's cooking. We'll get that in the summer probably.
But movie-wise, I think Sam and I have seen the same movies,
Which are?
Wrath of Khan and Generations.
Is
okay.
that the one that we watched? I
Yeah.
can't remember.
Okay, so Generations would immediately precede this movie.
Yeah, and then the new action Star Treks.
Cool. So, I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of talking too much about our cast. There's just so many of them. But I'd like to try out a little game here because I think that even if you haven't watched Star Trek, it really gets into our culture. And I think a lot of people know things about Star Trek without knowing about Star Trek. And I think we should take it like this. We're going to go with Benj and Ash to play this game.
Okay.
I'm gonna go through some questions, and if Ash can't handle the question, it'll
I
then
can't.
go to Benj. Because I think there will be a lot of these things that Ash will be able to
Oh,
tackle.
that's interesting. Yeah, because I always think about Galaxy Quest, which I love Galaxy Quest. And I remember when we watched it, you guys were like, oh, there's all these Star Trek jokes that I'm just like, to me, they're Galaxy Quest jokes, you know?
Yeah. And they're both because the best Galaxy Quest jokes are Star Trek jokes.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Totally.
In fact, Benj, did they not shoot part of Galaxy Quest at Vasquez Rock?
That sounds right. It's
feel
been a while
like they
since I've
might
seen
have done
Galaxy
that.
Quest.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That
I
feels right.
train
Yeah.
wrecked you, sorry.
So I want to start by talking about our characters here. So Ash, who is, going from the top down, who is first in command in our crew on the Starship Enterprise?
Captain Kirk?
That's almost the correct answer. We're now moving into a different crew. This is the Star Trek The Next Generation
Captain
crew.
Picard?
There you go.
Okay.
So this is the second movie featuring the Next Generation characters.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I feel like you have to
that-
sing his name.
Next Generation. Got it.
So this would have been around 80 years after the end of the original cast.
Wait, in real life?
Story years.
Oh, okay. I was like, how old is William Shatner? Oh my God. I knew he was
he looks
old,
great.
but geez.
So yeah, Captain Picard, of course, is the captain. And to give us some context to get us up to speed for this movie, of course, this being the 8th movie after 7 years of the TV show, Captain Picard is a very established diplomat. He's one of the most senior captains in the Federation.
Okay, I know he's bald.
He's bald.
That's the important thing.
I got that.
I think during Next Gen he was balding, right? He had that.
Oh, he did.
He was always bald on the top, but yeah, the sides went more.
Will
and more.
he do his famous face palm move, though?
I don't think he does that in this movie.
Okay.
Might.
Anyway.
And what I think is interesting about Picard in general, and particular to this movie, is, Next Generation was in the 90s when you had a lot of episodic television. And you would have some conflict, and then it would end, and then the next episode happens, and there's no stakes. Every episode starts over again with nothing having really changed.
Right.
And I think
procedural, right?
Exactly. And I think Captain Picard really changed that. Specifically, Ash, you know about the Borg. Do you know about the Borg?
Bad people?
Okay.
I don't know.
They're sort of like the Cybermen on Doctor Who.
Okay.
Robots that
Okay.
will take humans and turn them into robots. They have no emotion. They just want to conquer the fuck out of everybody.
Okay.
They want to cut up your planet and consume it, and they want to turn the people into more Borg.
Yeah, their whole thing is like, you will become Borg, and everyone's like, why? And like, cause.
And so there was a moment in the show where Captain Picard was literally turned into a Borg and became the leader of an invasion to destroy Earth.
You're telling me that the process of taking a human being and making them a robot is reversible?
It
And
will make
that was-
sense if you see it.
Okay.
Does it make sense, Sam? It was a little bit of
It
stretch.
makes more sense than the Cybermen in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
That's true. That shit doesn't make sense either.
And so that was a time when on TV we saw something really fuck with a character, something he had a very difficult time coming back from.
Gotcha.
And this really affected him. And Patrick Stewart has said in interviews that he really enjoyed how suddenly the character had flaws, had things that had truly hurt him.
Okay.
And this, I think, started getting us on a path to better television.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, I think, is an interesting question, and I'll accept two answers. Moving down in the ranks, who's the next person in charge on the Enterprise?
Benji. Ben.
Okay, Ben, who's the next person?
That is Commander Riker.
Okay, Commander William Riker.
Okay, I know you guys talk about him all the time.
Tall-
they mention him a lot.
Tall guy with a beard.
Yeah, he used to be terrible, and then he grew a beard, and then he was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's
General
the
consensus.
sexy one.
The sexy one. Okay.
When you'll see.
So he's
Does he
executive.
look just like Bryce and Brett? Is that why you're saying that?
He's
No.
like past tense sexy.
I'm saying it because there's like weird, ugly aliens, and he's meant to be like the attractive male. And-
I think I know who you're talking about now. And he's like kind of
The aliens come on the ship and they're like, this one has a beard. Like, meow, chicka, meow, meow.
See,
proving once and for all beards are sexy.
Kirk would beam down to the planet and have sex with aliens. But
I know that gag. Yeah.
Yeah. In Next Generation, they took on this angle of he's the executive officer, he's in charge of the crew, he's in charge of protecting the captain. So Riker is the guy who would go down to the planet and would always stop Picard from going down to the planet, which means Riker got to have sex with hot aliens.
And he himself was a hot alien?
Well, no, he's human.
He's human? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's tall, bearded guy from Alaska.
He's from Alaska?
Yeah.
No wonder he's hot.
I'm glad he made it out.
And so he's been offered his own starship many times, but he's always turned it down because he wants to stay with this crew.
Well, yeah, look at all the pussies.
So, okay, who would you say is our next person in line?
Data?
Wow, you got it. You nailed it.
Yeah!
Dude, you're doing better than me.
Okay.
It's been so long, I can't remember.
So Data, you might
I'm
remember
quickly running
as,
out of names I know, though.
Yeah. Data, you might remember as a fucking robot who has no business being crew on a starship.
God. Wait a minute. So let me tell you, Nick, I have a story for
Okay,
you.
go ahead.
Right after
We
we,
have this
recorded
discussion a
our
lot.
Westworld episode, I was running late to the Women's March in Los Angeles, and I really needed to print my posters. I had a conversation with my printer that never works. And I said, "Dear printer, if ever you were to work, let it be today. The world needs you. The fate of humanity depends on you, printer. Please work." And it printed 4 large-scale prints in perfect color flawlessly. It loves me now. I have made a connection.
Oh, no, Sam. I think you're proving his point.
Never
printed
worked.
a fucking thing.
Is that
Ever.
the new
So
Turing
when they
test?
become sentient, I have made that connection, Nick, and they won't come for me.
Correlation is not causation.
You know what? You go in there and talk to my printer. We'll see.
So yeah, I'm not going to say much more about Data. He's android. He's officially the second officer. He's the operations officer on the ship.
Okay.
He's a fucking robot.
And he's
everybody
not to be
likes him.
trusted.
He's he's not to be.
You are both
Oh,
wrong.
really? Oh, goodness.
Data in half of the episodes is the only reason the crew survives.
Yes. More than
Is
that.
he?
More than half. Every episode has a Data moment.
Every episode?
Like, if you go back and watch, I bet 9 out of 10 have a Data moment.
No, as a kid, I thought Data was the coolest because he's basically invincible, but that's the worst thing you can imagine when he flips a switch and goes rogue.
I mean, totally. And
Which he did at least a dozen times.
Yeah, and took over the whole ship and
Yeah.
And
there's
this dude is third in charge?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And there's like 1,000 people on board that are like, whose lives are in his hands.
Wow.
Anyway.
His cold,
cold,
unfeeling
white
robot hands.
Yeah. So we actually skipped over 2 people who hold higher rank than
Oh.
Data.
Okay, so I was
But,
wrong.
well, no, you're right, because Data is considered second officer in the command structure.
Oh, okay.
But there are 2 people who hold higher rank than Data. Can you think of one?
Spock?
Oh, Spock is original cast.
Oh, he's not. Oh.
Spock did appear in Next Generation as an ambassador, but he's not part of the main cast.
Well, then I might be out.
All right.
It's your
Benji,
turn,
To
Jack.
be honest,
No?
I feel like there's like 4 lieutenant commanders, aren't there? Isn't like my guess
there-
would be Geordi.
There are 3 people who hold the rank of commander, shockingly. So who's the chief medical officer on
Starbuck?
the Enterprise?
Beverly Crusher.
Okay, so Crusher holds the rank of commander.
Okay.
Dr. Crusher is the chief medical officer. Her husband died under Picard's command on a previous starship. So they've got this weird relationship of her husband died under his command, but they've got this weird will they, won't they romance thing brewing. So, Benj, who's the other person who holds the rank of commander? Shockingly, against all reason and logic,
Is it Troy?
it is Counselor Troy.
Yeah.
Because she gets a big chair.
Yeah. She's the psychiatrist on the ship. She's basically part of the medical team. She has a very important job, but for her to be a commander and qualified to basically command the starship in the absence of other staff members, that's insane to me.
Especially when, like, most of what she does for the whole series is just like, this doesn't seem like a good idea. I feel like something's wrong. And, like, I don't know what her qualifications are.
Yeah. Do you know anything about Counselor Troy?
No, but it sounds like I'm trying to remember the movie we saw recently. It was like a cop drama where there's like a therapist that's like, he's not ready.
Lethal Weapon.
Was it Lethal Weapon? Yeah, it sounds like a weird.
Not
like,
quite the interesting thing about Troy is she's an alien mix. She's human and Beta Z. Beta Zs can read minds. So she doesn't have all of the powers of a beta's head, but she can sense emotions. She can know when people are there. She knows when people are lying. So she can sense emotions.
Is lying an emotion?
Well, I was just listing. There are many things she can do.
Beta is B, and Z is she's a beezy.
Okay. That fucking beezy. All right, and then there are two other very important crew members who hold the same rank. Who have we missed, Ash?
I think everyone else I'm going to know is going to be from the original. Because I know they're Scotty, right?
Original.
Okay,
Original.
so Scotty's original cast.
Yeah.
Who has the same job as Scotty on Next Generation? Benj?
Is it going to me? Okay.
It's going to you.
That's Geordi.
Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge is the engineer. He basically runs the engines.
Okay.
He's the blind guy. He has that weird thing on his face.
He's blind?
He's blind, but he has an electronic
he's got the
prosthetic.
little strippy thingy.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
He's also the most human person. He's the guy that I identify with. He's the guy I want to be. He's
So
like
the guy
the normal
who
human guy.
You can't see his eyes. The guy who you can't see his eyes is the one that you have the best connection with.
I wouldn't define him as the guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's more than just a visor, Ash.
I'm just saying, normally, he sounds like a robot, is all I'm saying.
No. His
He's-
character is
yeah.
very much not a robot.
Okay.
I can see how you might think that based on his like character design, but
Yeah.
But they went out of their way to make it not prosthetic eyes, but like a thing, like a video camera that just like beams the image into your brain.
Because I remember when I was a little kid, the Exploratorium had glasses like that. And except they let you see prisms in light.
Yeah, he's kind of got like predator vision, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does not see like normal people. And this little nugget I've always liked, he's basically in pain all the time from this. Like he's learned to adapt to 24/7 headaches.
Wait, so did like something happen to his eyes?
He was born blind. Yeah. There was this awesome episode where LaForge gets trapped on a planet with a Romulan soldier. Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
And the Romulan figures out that he's blind and he says, "Your parents let you live?"
Oh my God.
yeah,
That says so much about what Romulans are all about.
Yeah, they're dicks.
So the last person we should be aware of, I want to talk about just a little bit to put in context, particularly for this movie, is of course Worf, the Klingon guy. You've seen him, Ash.
Maybe.
You know what a Klingon looks like.
Maybe.
Big spiny foreheads.
Okay.
They were the main bad guy in the original series.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of Klingon.
Okay. So he was the chief of security on the Enterprise. Then he was he was
That he was a transvestite Klingon.
That's a weird thought about Worf.
So Worf, after Star Trek Generations, was transferred to a space station, Deep Space Nine, you've probably heard about,
Yeah.
as a, tactical operations officer. But he also has, at his disposal, he often commands this super badass, undestroyable Federation ship.
Okay.
So
Did
that's
they
like-
call it the Titanic?
It's called the Defiant. And that's
Defiant,
basically
huh?
Worf's ship now, as we're going into this movie.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit you with one last little kind of trivia question before we get on to actually watching this movie.
All right.
And I'm curious where you go with this, Ash. A starship can move through space with 3 different methods of propulsion.
Okay.
Do you know
In the
three?
Star Trek
In the Star Trek
universe?
universe, yes.
Or in the theory of science.
We're not talking about real science. We're talking about Star Trek. Yeah. Because the gadgets, we could talk so long about gadgets.
Yeah.
Tricorders and transporters and all sorts of stuff. But I want to talk about propulsion.
Okay.
How does a spaceship move in Star Trek?
Movie magic.
He's not wrong.
Pulling on what I remember from Galaxy Quest, there's some sort of central core thing that gives it power to move.
Yeah, that's surprisingly accurate.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you, Galaxy Quest.
So a starship needs to move faster than light. So
Right.
the main method of propulsion is, Sam,
the warp core.
okay, warp engines. So
Okay, warp engine.
They can go warp speed. They can go
Right.
faster than light.
Okay.
Okay. This is the thing that basically makes Star Trek possible. If a ship can't move at warp speed, they ain't going anywhere. They ain't exploring anything.
Right.
It's probably the most important piece of gadgetry science, I think, in Star Trek.
And it's not based on real science or real theory of science?
Well, what's super fun is there are scientists theorizing not warp drive, but something kind of similar.
Because I've heard the thing
recently.
where you move space around you. Like you hold still and you
That's not-
warp space around you to
That's
move.
probably more Battlestar.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
that's Battlestar.
That's Battlestar. Okay.
This is, imagine if you could create a bubble of low air pressure.
Okay.
You would be squeezed out of that bubble because the higher air pressure around you would squeeze that bubble and you get squished out.
Okay.
So a warp bubble forms a low pressure in space that squeezes the ship and pushes it really fast.
It like basically gives birth to the ship.
Yeah.
Boils space around them.
Benj, can you think, or Sam, Brett, can you think of the other methods of propulsion?
So I mean, it's there's the warp drive, but is that different from the impulse engines?
That would be the next one,
Okay.
impulse.
I can see this look in Benj's eyes that he knows all the answers.
I don't. I do not
really?
know the third
Oh.
one. The
Really?
Impulse was my second guess.
Okay. Yeah, impulse is just basically we need to move around a solar system. It's incredibly fast, but it's not faster than light.
Oh, okay.
And then there's basic just maneuvering thrusters. You know, you need to change your orbital depth or whatever. You're just kind of
There's no ludicrous speed.
That would be warp 9.
There should be.
I think impulse falls into the maneuvering category.
Sure, but their thrusters are also there. That's like the just small little course correction-y type stuff.
So is that your 3? I feel
That's
like
the
you're
3.
forgetting 2 more.
Okay.
Oh.
Number 1, the actual most important invention in the Star Trek universe, transporter technology.
Okay.
They use that solely as, well, not solely, but mainly as transportation, but also to make all of their shit and food and gear whenever they need to repair the ship. But it moves people from place to place, or it kills them and disassembles them and reassembles them elsewhere.
Or it clones them. It's whatever the plot needs it to do. Really.
Yeah. It holds Picard in the pattern buffer in one episode and then can never do that again because it's impossible. Whatever.
It cloned Riker into 2 people.
It kept Scotty young for like 80 years.
Yeah.
It morphed 2 people together into one weird new person in Voyager.
Are we talking about Tubix?
Yes.
Yeah.
It made Picard and Ro and Guinan into children.
Yep.
What?
Oh yeah, that was a surprisingly good episode too.
Wow.
Transporter technology is not up to snuff in any of the Star Treks.
Wow.
Also, the holodeck, the thing that
yeah.
always breaks. Do you know about the holodeck, Ash?
No.
It's
I've heard the words though.
Okay. It's
As
a room
they came out of your mouth. No, I'm just kidding.
a room you go into, and it can project any environment with
Okay.
holograms that actually have solid mass to them.
It's like a real life version of the imagination room in Community.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that was that was a Star Trek
That's
joke.
exactly what it is.
Exactly.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, these
And it-
things I don't get.
Because they did like the yellow
Because
grid
you
on the
need
walls.
Yeah, the grid is directly from Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
And it always breaks down, and then like you've got Moriarty controlling the Enterprise.
Such a
There's,
good
like,
episode.
Moriarty.
Oh yeah,
From
from Sherlock Holmes, yeah. Because Data plays Sherlock Holmes books in the holodeck.
Oh.
Yeah. And
What?
And then it was fucking, who was it? It was Riker, I think, who was just like, computer, make a program that can defeat Data. It was like, good job,
The
idiot.
computer just did it. Yeah, that shit's ridiculous.
And then you're also forgetting wormholes.
And also, while you're on, wormholes
But
are
that's
important.
not a technology, right?
But they use it to move around.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that
to
does
move
have
around
more of
space,
an
yeah.
actual foundation in real science. But there is this idea of the was it the transwarp conduit that the Borg had that would make them move just ridiculous amounts of distances. So there's that on the books as well.
They made it out to the Alpha Quadrant. Spoilers, sorry.
Oh my God, Sam. What am I going to do?
So let's get into watching the movie. Just to mention, our guest stars are James Cromwell, who has appeared in a lot of Star Trek. They do this thing where they reuse actors a lot. Alice Krieger, who, have you guys been watching the OA?
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay, so the mother from the OA is
Oh.
Alice Krieger. She's
Wow.
in this. And then Alfre Woodard. She was most recently in Luke Cage as Black Mariah. She's in a series of Unfortunate Events. She's Aunt Josephine.
Oh, okay. She was great. Yeah.
And I think she's fantastic in this movie. So what are we expecting, Ash? What do you expect to get out of this?
I really don't know. I'm very excited because I've been wanting to get into Star Trek, so I'm excited to check it out. I'm expecting that I'll really like it because I love stuff like Battlestar Galactica and, sci-fi space stuff is totally right up my alley. And I don't know why I never got into Star Trek. I guess because my dad was a Star Wars fan and not Star Trek. So
there's also, I think you were saying before, there's so much content.
Yeah.
Where's the entry point?
It's like a commitment. You're like, fuck, where do I start?
And there's a lot of seasons
Yeah.
of each series.
And I've definitely seen a couple of the William Shatner episodes. Those weren't really ever enough to like hook me. So, but I was always like, do I need to see those? Do I not? I don't know. We'll find out. I'll find out if I'm completely lost when I watch this movie or not.
Yeah, if I've done my job, I've given you the context.
Thank you. I
need.
appreciate that.
And yeah. So what do you expect, Sam?
I'm super excited because I love Next Gen and I love Star Trek, and we're totally watching it every night. So I'm expecting to have a ton of fun. I'm expecting Ash to be very confused.
Yeah, we'll see.
I
We'll
hope
see.
not. I will say that. So I feel like other sci-fi stuff is more focused on like traditional character-y type drama, and they have like weird romance and relational things. And Star Trek, for me, what I like about it is that it's a lot about the science and very like theoretical of like how life could be, like very future forward. And that's what I enjoy. It's like this great utopia where we're not worried about basic problems. These are like new things that people have never encountered before. And it's really
That's such an important point. That Star Trek was Roddenberry's vision of what the future should be. There's a lot of sci-fi where it's shooting aliens, and this has always been the optimistic and discovery and what our culture should try to achieve.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
And the movies don't always hit that mark. Brett, what do you expect?
So I remember as a child that I wanted to see this movie and never got to see it. I haven't seen this. Data's in it.
Yeah.
I'm not willing
So
to
much
bet that it's going to happen, but if the data moment happens, I will scream out loud, "Data moment!"
Okay.
And we will have a conversation about it on the second half. Because I fully expect that to happen at some point, where it might not be like the resolution to the whole movie, but there will be a moment where everyone would die or like not be able to progress with the plot unless Data does something.
Okay. So of course I'm super Star Trek fan. And so I've been going back and watching recently. So I've just finished Next Generation. I'm watching Deep Space Nine, and I just watched Generations. So I'm actually right at the point in the chronology where this is my next thing to watch.
Wow. How convenient.
Yeah, how convenient. And this wasn't even my idea to watch this movie. And I think I'm going to enjoy it. I don't want to say too much because I kind of know what's up, but I expect to enjoy it. What do you expect, Benj?
I saw this movie opening night and
Oh, wow.
loved it so much because it was like I loved Star Trek Next Generation, and this was like you said, they kind of like hit the reset button at the end of every episode, and I loved this movie because they just broke so much stuff, and it was just like there's more money being thrown at the story, and I loved the Borg. That was my favorite villain, so I remember being like, this is a top shelf badass action movie that I could see at my, because it was PG-13. It was like the most hardcore thing I had seen at the time. So it'll be interesting to see. I think I wore out the VHS that I owned of this, and I haven't seen it since. So
How did you feel about Generations, the movie that came before this?
I enjoyed it at the time, but it felt like a more expensive episode, and it was a little wonky in its storytelling. And this is very straightforward and a lot more action involved. And it makes, if memory serves, it makes a lot better use of the crew, because Generations was all about Picard and Shatner.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
What's his real name? Kirk. Oh, Kirk.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, since you saw this on opening night, did you see any of the new ones on opening night?
I don't. No, I don't.
Or
think
in theaters at all?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
saw all of them in the theater, but maybe not opening night.
Because I guess I'm curious from your perspective of like how different is the crowd that these movies are attracting nowadays? Because it has to be very different, right? Because people like me who never saw Star Trek was like, oh, I'm going to see this movie.
I feel like there is a wider audience for the Kelvin
new
universe, the JJ movies. But there's a lot of like hardcore people that refuse to accept it. I am also a huge Star Wars fan, so I'm kind of okay with some of the shifts that they made. And honestly, like Star Trek Beyond, I think was a lot more true to the original TV series than even the JJ movies before that. But that is like a personal preference that is not necessarily that popular within Star Trek fandom.
So to Trekkies, is the new Star Trek movies basically like the old, newer Star Wars movies where some Trekkies are like...
If you gave Sherlock Holmes a gun and he solved all of the crimes by shooting everyone he thought was a criminal instead of actually detecting, that's kind of the difference.
You're not caught up, are you?
Well, no.
Anyway.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
In that it's very entertaining, but I don't think it's popular for the reasons that Star Trek was popular.
Right. I'm just curious if it's like this black, like, you know, there's people who are hardcore Star Wars fans that are like, episode 1 through 3 just don't exist, you know?
I think there's conflicting opinions, certainly. I think the Kelvin universe is intentionally more accessible to a broader audience.
Yeah.
And those of us who accept that really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're thoroughly entertaining. It's just not a lot of...
Oh, I mean, I like
It
them.
is
There's
a
not
lot
as
less
much drama.
philosophical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot-
it's tonally
Which is an issue that happens in the movies. Like they tend to be more actiony and they don't have that philosophical discovery element.
Yeah.
And the first Star Trek film did have that, and people took a dump on it because it was too slow. If you didn't like 2001, you wouldn't like the first Star Trek movie. You know, it's that slow burn again. But yeah, the Kelvin is much more actiony, and if you embrace that, I think it's good. All right, so we're going to rewatch Star Trek First Contact. It is no longer available on Netflix in the U.S. It was recently, but you can get it on the Google Play Store or iTunes. So you might want to check it out and join us after the movie. Da, 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 da. So we just rewatched Star Trek First Contact. So Ash, do you like Star Trek now?
I do, actually. I really enjoyed it, I will say. Even though, you know, there was Miss Galaxy and Stoner Robot, it was still...
Mixed Galaxy being your response to Worf's
Worf.
sash.
Yes.
Yeah.
His pretty sash.
And who was the stoned robot?
That's Data. His eyes were red. Is it just me? He looked like he was stoned the whole time.
He only speaks in the data cadence when he's high.
Yeah. Captain, save me. Like, totally.
So I think there's two types of Star Trek movies. There's like the cerebral exploration, and then there's just the action stuff. And I think this was action.
Yeah.
And it's cool that you like it, but I can't say it's representative of Star Trek.
See, that's
you know?
interesting that you say that because I didn't find it a very action-y movie. But maybe that's
Interesting.
just because today's standards of action, like this wasn't.
Then you have not seen Star Trek the Motion Picture. If you want to talk about not action.
Yeah, there's a lot of action in this comparatively to Next Generation, the series. One of my favorite things that I bring up a lot about Next Gen is like the only time anyone ever does like a physical thing in the whole series is the very first episode when Worf jumps over the console.
Oh, yeah.
And then no one ever like fucking even runs for like 7 seasons.
That bugs me. Like emergencies, invasions, ships blowing up, they walk calmly down the hallway every time. The other thing that bugs me is Klingons are built up as like king badasses of the galaxy. Riker can take down 4 of them by hand. Like I've probably seen Troy fight a Klingon. Like whenever there's crowds of Klingons, it's just humans mowing through them. It's just wrong.
Well, and Worf gets his ass handed to him a lot, but it's always to introduce a new bad guy. It's like, oh, they're so powerful, they took out Worf. It's like, everybody takes out Worf.
But Worf did have his moment. You know, he had that knife kind of tucked away.
He had some great moments in this movie.
He chopped apart a Borg.
That's a pretty ballsy move, hiding a knife in your fucking spacesuit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very very risky, but he pulled it off.
Closing a leak on his suit with the severed arm that he just cut off.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, like literally like the veins
With
of
the
another
corpse
Borg.
of his enemies. Yes.
Brutal.
But, you know, that I don't know. It was probably not so significant for you, Ash. Probably more significant for you, Benj. But that moment where Picard calls Worf a coward. If you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand. Says so much about their relationship and their history, and that was such a powerful scene. One of the most powerful scenes in all of Star Trek, knowing those characters.
Yeah, definitely. Like this is the wildest that you ever see Picard get as far as like not controlling his temper.
Yeah.
And I think aside from Benj reminding me of the supercut of Picard telling Worf no 1,000 times.
Check that out on YouTube.
It's one of the few times like anyone says anything mean to Worf because you don't fucking do that.
and also that's not a hollow statement. If it were any other man, he literally would kill him right there. But because of who Picard is and what he's done for Worf, for the Klingon Empire, like he's one of the few people he actually respects. And yeah, that's huge. If you like those characters.
Yeah. I thought this held up pretty well. Like this is about like what I remember about it. It still has like some very silly plotting, like as the how easily they just brush over the time travel. And, and granted, they've done it a few times, but even on the show, it seemed like it was a really big deal. It's like we're going back in time. Don't mess anything up. you know?
And not just them, but the girl that they bring up, Lily from Earth.
Yeah.
He's like, she's freaked out at seeing Earth from space, but then later he's like, this is a holodeck and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, you know, so quickly.
I can kind of make peace with a character in the movie, like we need to move things on. But like the dogs were running around in the beginning of the movie. I'm like, all right, did everybody see what just happened? Like, I didn't even know if you guys knew that they had just traveled back in time.
Oh, no.
Because it was so fast.
I didn't until Benj said something about it.
Yeah.
Like, how did we travel back in time?
I elbowed you and said, they're going back in time.
Yeah. I think he said a temporal disturbance. And Star Trek
a
fans.
wake.
Yeah.
They were caught in the temporal wake.
But, you know, I thought they didn't actually say tachyons, which are always the thing that they talk about when they time travel. There's always tachyons.
So were they time boarding on the wake?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Sorry.
Well, and they took a very like cavalier Doctor Who-ish sort of like, hey,
Yeah,
we're going to meet our heroes. And we're going to tell them all about it. And they're going to be cool with it. And
we're going to make it happen, actually.
yeah, this isn't like aliens messed up the timeline. We're going to fix it. And and we have no problem just giving you all sorts of exposition that you may or may not need. It's really more for the folks at home.
And are we meant to believe that all of the people who were working on that project are now dead? Like, there should have been 2 other people in the ship with Cochrane. And suddenly Troy is, running the whole thing.
Yeah, and Lily probably should have been on that craft, right? As his assistant?
I don't know. Like,
I don't know. We
They
don't know.
kind of
Okay,
implied, like, the history of it is that Cochrane did it solo, which matches up with...
why were there 3 seats?
Well, but...
Having studied the Mercury and the Apollo program, like, you don't put seats in that thing you don't need.
But, like, I think that's how they justified it. That's how they justified it, is because it was always Geordi and Riker, and they just ghosted after. That's the only one that got written down in history books is Cochrane.
Yeah. Who cares about the other people?
Yeah, because there is that small settlement, but they all seem like a bunch of drunks. They don't ever do any real work on the project.
Yeah. They're the people who are hired to do the grunt work of building the missile.
It's people who seem to not even be aware that it was there, because when it's taking off, they're like, what?
So
there's a rocket under there? Oh, look at that.
Who knows what the official data moment was?
There were a few.
Well, I would argue that, if you're saying the data moment is him saving the day, I would say it was the moment he broke the gas thing and the gas stuff came out.
But anyone could have done that.
But not survived.
Completely true.
Yeah.
what you
That's
just
true.
said, Benj.
The
Yeah.
surviving
Yeah.
is important, I suppose.
Sometimes you need a robot to go do that
and
grunt work.
anybody else would have been assimilated completely, right? But because he was a robot, he wasn't.
That
so.
too.
When he jumped down the missile silo.
Like fucking creeper. Oh my god.
He was falling for so long.
Yeah.
The one I call out as the thing that allowed the entire rest of the movie to happen is his out programming the Borg and putting the encryption key on whatever MacGuffin system he was locking up. And it was just like, I've encrypted it and some shit, and the Borg will never figure that out. Like, and that was the whole plot of the rest of the movie, was the Borg trying to unlock that shit.
That's
That
true.
doesn't bother me. Because if you look at encryption on like just file encryption on a computer, hackers know how encryption works. They just don't have the key.
Oh yeah,
So
but
you
nobody could have encrypted all the systems or what, like his
That is the
hypertyping.
data moment. Like
that was the
is
data moment.
Only data
Oh,
could
yeah.
have done
in
that.
in the amount of time they had, either Data did it or everyone on the ship died then.
Can we
Yeah.
talk about his fast finger movements?
That's not the first time that's happened in the
That
show.
is some interesting.
He is fully functional.
Yeah, fully. Did I not call that shit? I was like, they are gonna bone
That was a
down.
fantastic callback, though.
I'm glad you saw that. Explain.
That was his fully functional line is from the last time that happened with
Oh, really?
with Yar, and she's
Back
like
in season 1.
and they were
if I'm
like
not mistaken.
they got some sort of like flu bug that made everybody super horny on the ship, and
once
and
a
Yar
week.
was like Data, like come over here and do the sex, and he was like I don't know about that. She's like, you are capable, right? And he's like, I am fully functional, and like he's like, whoa, yeah. So seeing it again was disturbing, but funny.
Yeah.
There was a lot more body horror in the stuff in this movie, and just like torture porny, like grabbing
Yeah.
people and jamming like things into their eyes and necks and things.
Lots of jamming.
It's like, this is PG-13.
Freezing.
You guys are watching Voyager. You remember the
Yes.
Vidians?
Yeah.
So I just got around to that stuff, and I'd forgotten, like, as far as like body horror, these are the aliens that have their entire species infected by a disease.
Oh,
so they
yeah.
will just transport organs out of you and steal your organs.
And they wear a guy's
They're
face
so
like the first time you see him, right?
All of their skin is grafted from like 12 different people.
Ew.
Those fuckers are scary.
They're like
Yeah.
Silence of the Lamb horror people.
Yeah, it's like a whole race of Buffalo Bills.
Skin suits.
With a device that can scan you, transport your organs out, and put them in a jar in like one move.
Ugh.
And their technology was, I think they presented it as like way better than the Federation's.
Yeah.
Like if they wanted to come and take over, you couldn't stop them.
Yeah. That is some body horror in Star Trek every now and then.
Is body horror a common term?
It's like a thing I've seen a lot lately where,
Horror.
It's like David Cronenberg stuff, just like
Just gore.
what if your limbs fell off, or what if I don't know what is a proper definition of body horror?
It's anything that is distorting the body in a way that is unnatural.
Yeah, yeah, like peeling your skin off or something like that. There's a lot of that in
One of
in
our
this.
Twitter friends just applies it to the thought of pregnancy. Body horror, no thanks.
And it just
After
continues
my
when it comes
Christmas.
out of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, after my experience this Christmas, I don't deny that.
No,
I've seen some shit.
Suddenly everything Vicky told you came into crystal clear focus.
So it's interesting you talk about the Data moment. Can you tell me which was the Troy moment?
When she got
Which
drunk.
one was Troy?
Good point.
Okay.
Like that's a problem, I think. Like it's tough to write around 7 characters, but she might as well have not been in the movie.
this was just like somebody was like, I'm done with Troy. She gets drunk in the first scene
And then she counts
passes
them
out.
down later for
Yeah.
launch. And that's
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
And
They
they're like,
could not
wait,
launch that
hold on.
rocket
And
without
she's
her.
like, 3, 2. And they're like, whoa, we got to wait. She's just still.
She did have the one moment where she got. Actually, there was like an important scene where she met Zephram Cochrane, and we don't get to see any of that. She
Yeah, I was-
sort
Yeah.
of drunkenly recaps what happened earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we completely missed their meet cute.
Which sounded like it would have been an interesting scene.
Yeah.
And then what the guy, so I'm curious from a perspective of somebody who doesn't know much about Star Trek. There was the guy who, I don't know his name, but he was like too beautiful to be a man. But he became one of the people, and then Picard like killed him and threw him off into space.
You mean
and I got the feeling
Neil McDonough?
Yeah, I got the feeling from this movie that he was like an established character.
Which I think I think that was intentional. He was
A
not
nice mystery.
This is the first time we've ever
They
seen
do
him.
that.
Gotcha.
So as you watch Star Trek more, this is a thing they do all the time.
Oh, they introduced someone to kill them off.
Yeah, and it's maybe not every episode, but like we just finished an arc in Voyager where it's just like there's a new person in engineering. Who is this fucking guy? I hate this guy. And
And then he died.
like
so
a couple
much
episodes
dialogue.
later, he's a villain, and it's just like.
But Neil McDonough is an awesome choice because you've seen him in some stuff. You may not completely remember him.
Okay.
He looks like an action star. He looks like he belongs in that crew.
I was thinking he looked a lot like I forget his name, but the guy that they have playing Kirk in the new.
He
Yeah.
does
He
look
does.
like
Young
Chris Pine.
McDonough looks like Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Did you? This is the first time I've noticed him smoldering in the background of all the scenes he's in.
Dude, he is, and that's the reason why I thought he was like an established character because he's
Just
like
so
always
handsome in the
there,
back there.
like. Well,
That was
You
funny
know?
because I had the complete opposite thought in that opening scene where it's just like, okay, like it's the crew of the Enterprise, and then this new guy.
Yeah.
Do you remember that Next Generation episode where somehow all of their memories were erased? They didn't know who they are or what the fuck they were doing. Mm-hmm. And there was this other guy on the bridge. And they're like, who are we?
Mr. Poopy Butthole.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it was Mr. Poopy Butthole. He's like, yeah, who are we? And that was fucking creepy because we, the audience,
been
knew
here
that guy
the
didn't
whole
belong. Yeah, that's
And didn't losing their memories make them super horny as well? Like, wasn't that a thing? Like Riker
Is that
and
a
Ro
con-
hooked up. Is
Riker
that
and
the
Ro
same?
hooked up. Yeah,
Yeah, because like, why not? I don't know. I don't know who you are. We probably do this.
So there's a lot of sex in Star Trek, huh?
every now and then.
Okay.
So, okay, there's no Troy moment. I believe there is a Dr. Crusher moment, but Alfred Woodard swooped in and took the scene. That whole Ahab scene, that should have been Dr. Crusher.
And she kind of gives her the baton too. She's like, "Oh well, you're the guest star. You want to take this scene?"
Yeah. It's like, oh, we can't reason with him. He's the captain.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really should have been Crusher's scene.
Do you feel that the character of Captain Picard is consistent in the movies as the same in the TV show?
I think that's a very common complaint. He becomes an action star.
Yeah,
in
he's real
season
kirked up.
5 or 6.
Kirked up.
Yeah.
I mean, like that end thing where he's like swinging from the ropes and he
Yes.
becomes like Captain Jean-Luc Picard body.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And like you said from the beginning, you called how he just slowly strip teases.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
in like the big overcoat. Then he gets back to the ship and he's just in the regular uniform. Then he's in the vest. Then he's just
like
a red
slowly
shirt.
unzipping
And then
for the rest of the
zipper's
movie.
working its way down for the rest of the movie. And then he's in a tank top.
Ugh.
Which is funny because in Galaxy Quest, the gag
Yeah.
is with Sigourney Weaver doing that. Her
Yeah, the
her
zipper
uniform
goes
like
down.
slowly
Yeah.
coming off. Yeah.
But also there's the Tim Allen managed to get his shirt off.
Right,
thing, too.
yeah.
Yeah. I even noticed that Hawk, Neil McDonough, like he had his zipper going down, showing off the chest a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought
Oh,
Worf
it's so-
was going to be like,
so hot on
"Fix
this
your
ship."
uniform.
Oh, yeah. Worf should have taken issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not up to code.
I love how you told me beforehand that Adam Scott was in this movie, and I don't think I would have known if you hadn't told me
I didn't even see him.
because he's in there so quick and the lighting is so dark. He's like in Worf's ship when they're being attacked.
Okay.
I missed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because if you watch Deep Space Nine, you get used to Worf in that chair with Deep Space Nine characters around him. And then it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, maybe Adam Scott. Yeah. He's been in some stuff. Yeah.
Maybe someone else.
Pre-Step Brothers.
Well,
Adam Scott.
did I miss it, or like did his ship get blown up too? What
It was
happened to
another
his
one of
ship?
those like super brief lines. He says, "The Defiance adrift but salvageable," and Worf's like, "Okay, I'm on your crew now." That's all that happened.
It's like, you beamed out all my stuff too, right? I'm like, yeah, we got it.
And somebody said, like, noted that
was
Worf is
little.
on the ship, so whoever else was in that position is now demoted.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
like, we could use a hand at tactical. It's like, well, you've got a guy who's been building a career for the past 2 years at that tactical station.
Yeah, and that guy has been hearing for 2 years how much more they love Worf over him.
That's okay. He got assimilated.
Yeah.
Just out of frame, there's some guy like, oh.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell, guys?
Also, where's Dax and O'Brien? Like, why are they not
Exactly.
on the Defiant during this mission? It's just Worf and a bunch of red shirts, basically.
Unknown.
See, yeah, I was wondering if like his whole ship got exploded and then he just gets a whole new ship in the future with these people that you're talking about.
That would have been a problem for Deep Space Nine if the Defiant were just gone one day.
It's the what happened after the cutaway in that scene when they rescued Worf is he's like, it's a good day to die, and then they're like, the Enterprise is here. He's like, for you guys.
See you later. Scott's like, what the fuck?
You guys want to play Cones of Duncher?
We got like 25 minutes probably.
Can we talk about the titular line?
Yes. Oh.
So, at one point, when the crew is explaining who they are to Zephram Cochrane, he says, "So you're all on some kind of Star Trek?"
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There should be a requirement where you have to like turn to the camera when you deliver that line.
And like wink.
It's like, hello, my name is Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
you know that's what happened, and they had to shoot that like 50 times because he just wouldn't stop saying it like that.
Yeah.
It was like a Family Guy moment. Like, why are you saying it like that? Like what? Star Trek. And it's like, no, stop it.
It's a joke, right? No.
I think there is a supercut online of when people say the title of the movie in the movie. Like you can search for that on YouTube. It's pretty good.
Probably.
But he doesn't quite save it by saying on some kind of, because Will Smith does the same thing in Suicide Squad. He's like, are we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Yeah.
That doesn't save it. It's still really awkward.
It would have been great if it was like, today is some kind of Independence Day.
Like we're fighting some kind of Star Wars.
So you're
What
a
is
bunch of
this, a Star
soldiers in some sort of Star Wars?
What are you, the last samurai?
I think Benj and I were both kind of sitting here very excited to see what the reaction would be when Crusher activates the emergency medical hologram.
Yeah, I was so excited. I was like, EMH. EMH. No.
What is that?
I was like, I know what that stands for. And I was like, yes, it's him.
How does a hologram run into a wall, though?
Oh,
he like
there's things.
okay.
They have solid mass when
Oh.
they're being projected.
Okay.
There's this great scene on Voyager where the doctor is explaining that whole thing and he slaps a guy and the guy's like pissed off and then he turns around and he hits a couple buttons on a panel and he says, now you slap me. And the guy, his hand goes right through him because the doctor can control when he's solid or not.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But the doctor cannot exist out of sickbay. Are those the
In
rules?
season 1 and 2, you are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you guys are on season 3?
Season 3. And some jerk has a technology from 500 years in the future that they steal and break the Prime Directive just so that they can have the doctor walk around on the ship.
That's not just.
Pretty much. That's the only thing they took.
Did they hand him a vacuum? They're like, your new name is Roomba.
So as much as I complain about Data, I've got so much more to complain about the emergency medical hologram.
No, don't
wanna
touch
hear it.
this.
I wanna hear
No.
it.
Well, it's by nature a simulated person to step in when the doctor is decapacitated. Just like the characters in the Dixon Hill novel are simulating people. But then Kess walks onto the ship and says, you're a real person and people should respect you. And people buy into that bullshit. It's a simulation. There's absolutely no reason to give it a sense of self, to give it any autonomy. It's just a hologram.
I'm a little more on your side with that one than with Data. Because even in Voyager, like, the doctor kills a dude like murders him, and they're like, "Oh, but your program was weird. It's cool. Like we fixed the program."
Speaking of
I don't remember that.
Speaking of this episode, it's a fucking Westworld episode. The doctor
becomes self-aware and kills people.
Yes, he's self-aware already, and he like tries to program more variants in his character.
They let him alter his own software.
Yeah, he alters his own code and fucks it up and becomes a murderer.
I would propose that he has not become self-aware. That just like any holodeck character, he's just simulating and responding to stimuli.
This is an argument, Sam, that you're never going to win with him.
But Star Trek does love to have the episode where somebody goes nuts, and sometimes they kill people, and then it's like, oh, but you just had that fever, so you're not actually
Yeah.
liable
they've made
for.
really clear that like it's the future. We don't kill people anymore as punishment.
Unless we go crazy.
Yeah.
Temporarily.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, so if people go and murder people, there's like no repercussions in the future.
Unless they're a character we care about. But that never happened.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, there was that very heavy moment where Lily's saying, "You're not coming with us." He's like, "There's somebody on this ship I have to save." I'm like, "Oh, is it Ensign Lynch? Is it that guy?" Like, why is there one person on this ship right now you need to save? But you were saying like, "Oh, if you see somebody, just kill them on sight."
Yeah.
Like those were the standing orders.
Well, I like the moment before that when he's standing in the control room or whatever by himself, and then it's like all of a sudden he's like, "Oh my God, Data! I totally forgot about him for the past like 20 minutes." It's like, oh yeah, that guy.
Does that third act go down to the basement to kill a queen and rescue somebody who's been captured remind you of any other iconic sci-fi films?
Interesting.
Because when the movie came out, I remember reading some kind of interview with Jonathan Frakes. He's like, "Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Alien and Aliens."
Yeah.
Okay,
And then
I was gonna say
years
Aliens.
later, when I could rent it on my own, I saw Aliens. Like, hang on a minute.
There's all kinds of like tubes hanging down.
The whole like weird sexual tension between Data and her was totally reminding me of like when Sigourney Weaver like fucks that alien.
Sorry, who?
Sorry,
Sigourney Weaver, fuck that dude.
Well, we don't know who inserted what.
Wait a minute, which dude?
No, the alien. In one of the Alien movies, Sigourney Weaver fucks an alien.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, do you mean like the clone of Sigourney Weaver and Resurrection?
Yeah.
Because there's a weird alien hybrid baby that like has people's skin on it.
Yeah, and there's totally
Yeah.
like a sex alien
There was some
scene.
body horror.
Yeah. There's a lot of psychosexual stuff going on in that franchise.
From the director who brought us Amelie.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's a Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Yeah.
The French are strange.
That guy is awesome.
But it opens with Picard having nightmares about the Borg, and then a bunch of people with a bunch of guns are going to go kick some ass, and they all get their asses handed to them, and then they're escaping at the end, and then he goes back into the bowels of the Earth or the ship to go get Newt/Data.
Yeah.
And it's just like all these like
great. He should have
bullet
walked in.
points.
Get away from him, you bitch.
may have been too on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was almost like this weird supernatural element there where it's like he seemed to have like known the Borg were coming before he knew, and then he like, you know, seemed to have known that Data like needed his help, or
It goes in and out.
It's a
Yeah.
stretch.
Yeah.
You know, I guess we're meant to believe that he still has some connection to the collective.
yeah.
Which they
That's
explain
a
later.
stretch.
They explain it later in Voyager. It happens.
Do they?
It happens again, and they're just like, yeah, basically, once you're connected to the hive mind, you're connected forever until they cut you off.
Kind of like being in a
So
cult.
if they don't choose to cut you off, then you can still hear them.
Oh.
But it was like a distance thing. It was like,
Yes.
and the reception now, you know, like what?
Yeah, that's
You got-
very much how they explain it in Voyager.
Okay.
You got 5 bars on the bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they are kind of zombies, you know, or vampires in a way. It's a
Or hornets.
Oh yeah.
Ash pointed
there was
out.
a lot of conversation about hornets. as
It
we were
really
watching.
felt like a hornet infestation where you're just like, okay, well, if we don't touch them, they won't attack us, but this is not a good situation. We really need to get that hive out of here and detach, but we can't get too close because they'll fuck us up.
Yeah, I have a couple of like weird thoughts about the Borg in general, but maybe this is too deep into Star Trek for the podcast.
Hey, you're the editor.
Okay, so like they had these rifles, and they shoot at the Borg in the beginning of the movie, and then they figure it out, and then the rifles stop working on the Borg. Why did they ever use them again? Like for the rest of the movie, they kept shooting at the Borg with the rifles. And weirdly, that kept working.
Well, Bret,
Well,
the thing about the rifles is they look really cool.
Well, didn't they give like a line in dialogue saying, I've randomized these to like 12 different types of shots?
And then later, when they went out to in their suits to work on the dish, Worf said, "I was able to squeeze a few more rotations out, but we only have 1 or 2 shots." But I think your point is valid. They need to think of different ways, and I think the holodeck scene is great, and I think Worf should have just carried a batleth the whole time. You know, because if he can just take down one with a knife, just carry the batleth.
If you just walk through the ship beheading all the Borg, there would have been no problem.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no problem, but it would have been a more effective weapon.
It's like,
Were there any Vulcans on board? Because clearly those people have samurai swords, so they could like borrow.
Where have you seen a Vulcan with a samurai sword?
I don't know. They were fucking wearing kimonos.
Yeah, they definitely look like Jedi when they walked out of that ship.
Now, that's an interesting thought, though, because they have replicators so they can just kind of create whatever they need at any time. And so why didn't they get some melee weapons and go
Seems like
bash some heads in?
Because they couldn't get
Molotov
that
cocktails.
actiony. That was a little too much.
I mean, Worf did hack apart a guy on screen.
Oh, man.
Like,
And it was the most effective way to fight them.
I must have missed that part. I must have been
Worf killed a guy.
pulling. I must have been covered in dogs at the point when that happened.
When they were out working on the dish.
Oh,
He
that's when it
did
happened.
that.
even get that sword, Worf?
I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point. I was about to say, well, he's got like 8 in his quarters, but that ain't his ship. He don't got quarters on that ship.
Oh, you know when he left the ship, he's like taking this guy
Yeah.
and this. It was like a total Crocodile Dundee moment there. Now this is a knife.
Maybe he replicated one.
It's possible.
One other Borg thought.
Okay.
This is bigger than the movie for sure. Does the Borg Queen ruin
Yes.
the Borg?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Borg Queen is a horrible idea. It's probably Jonathan Frakes watching Aliens. Mm-hmm. It makes for a good action movie, but it completely diffuses the entire point of the Borg. It's like you've got an individuality running this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there are lots of her, right? Because Picard says, hey, you were on that original cube and that was destroyed. And she's like, oh, there's lots of us.
She
I
said,
got
think
that
she-
feeling.
Or it was a little more cryptic than that.
yeah. She
Yeah.
said, you think 3-dimensionally.
Yeah.
It's more complicated. Yeah.
So
So she's more like a Cylon, where like it's like, oh, there's another one of me.
kind of. I mean, I don't know if she's truly an individual or if she's just the mouthpiece of the Borg and there's a bunch of her and there's one on every ship maybe, or it's not clearly defined.
It was clearly just something to motivate the action in this movie that doesn't really work.
To give a clear bad guy, because it's hard to
They need to put a
have-
face on the bad guy.
Though I will say, I thought they were way scarier before they introduced her. Like, there's this one shot where they like open the door to a hallway or something, and it's dark, and then you just see the little laser sights, and I was like, "Whoa, that's kind of scary." You know, like that's
agree.
a cool thing. And I feel like they could have made them really scary if they stuck to that sort of vibe.
Totally.
But as is the standard in Hollywood, nothing is scarier than
a woman?
than a sexual woman.
A woman in charge, a sexual woman in
Wow.
charge. Yeah.
Oh, damn it, Bret. Why?
So end of conversation.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
One criticism-ish thing that I have with this.
Don't you criticize Star Trek.
This movie is perfect. What are you
Not
talking about, Sam?
criticizing Star Trek, but compared to the TV show, there is a lot more like exposition-y stuff to make their plot line make sense. There were several moments where I was like, wait, why are they able to do that? And Brett would be like, well, you didn't hear him say that line, that
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh shit.
There were a lot of one-sentence lines that explained a lot.
Yeah.
Like, they said something like, oh, we analyzed the temporal wake and I know how to make it happen again and we can get home.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's a huge leap, you guys.
Yeah. And maybe this is why I didn't feel like it was a super actiony film, is to also go hand in hand with that is there's not a lot of, besides the scenes where action is happening, there's not a lot of blocking or movement. It's a lot of people standing around and like explaining things to each other. And I don't know if that's how Star Trek normally is. Yeah, I was going to assume that was how it was.
I was about to say the opposite, which means you're right. Star Trek is very much like that. I would say that I'm very impressed with the direction here. Like, as far as somebody who grew up as a TV director, like he was an actor on the show, he wanted to direct some episodes, then they let them direct this movie. Like, when you look at the other Star Trek movies, I think this was really good direction compared to other Star Trek movies.
This was a good Star Trek movie, like, especially compared to like when we watched Generations. Like, Generations just was very, very dry. You know, and that's like the whole mindset of Star Trek is like everything is dry. Like most of the deepest like thought-provoking moments come from either like Spock or Data or Tuvok, where they're just like, if you think about this, the answer is simple, and then the humans are just like, how are you so deep, robot? Like,
You understood us all along.
So I'll start with you, Benj. Like, how do you feel this stacks up in the Star Trek movies? How many have there been?
I think we're on 11.
Well, if this was 8, 9, 10, I think we're at 13 if you count Kelvin.
Yeah, okay. So wait, there were 10 pre-reboot.
Yeah.
Are we at 13? Oh, I should know this.
Something like that, yeah.
I gotta turn in my nerd card. I'm sorry. That's shameful.
Revoked.
I think this is definitely the best of the Next Generation cast. I really like 2 and 6. I still
agreed.
I do enjoy. I mean, 3 has its charms, and 4 is very silly, and there's no Enterprise, which kind of is a strike against it. But
3's charms can be summarized with 2 words: Christopher Lloyd.
Oh yeah, like Christopher Lloyd's fantastic.
Those are the charms of Star Trek 3.
But I also just love I think that's the one where they steal the Enterprise, right? To go get. It's like the answer is no. I'm therefore going anyway. That's kind of amazing. I mean, I don't know. Like the first 6 are really damn charming just because of William Shatner.
Do you feel like we chose a good one to introduce Ash to Star Trek?
Yeah, I feel like this is a good gateway Star Trek.
Yeah, I feel like we also didn't talk about, I definitely was entertained, but I was also really surprised at how well the special effects really held up.
This movie represented a big turn in the history of Star Trek movies.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I feel like even to today's standards, it held up pretty well. Yeah. There's maybe some like prosthetics that weren't so great, but like the actual ships.
Yeah.
And some of the explosions, like, I don't know if you guys know, did they do models or is that CG?
I think CG was coming along, but they weren't quite totally confident in it to make everything CG.
Right.
So like a lot of model work.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. It's a good blend. I think Sam was saying that when we were watching it.
Yeah. They really know like what will work well for their CG capabilities and kind of use it to its fullest potential. Mm-hmm. They do a good job. Balancing that. But I'm sad they redid the transporter effect. It's not the same.
And that's pretty normal from one movie to the next or one series to the next. Like the transporter in Voyager looks a lot like one of the original cast transportors, which looks very different from Next Generation.
Yeah.
They just updated the software, Sam. Don't get attached, I think would say.
So with the movies, Bret and Sam, that you've seen, you saw what, 2 in Generations?
Yes.
2 and 7.
Yeah.
And this would be 8. Mm-hmm. How does this compare to those?
I think it's really good. It doesn't even feel like they're the same type of movie, though. Like if you compare this to Wrath of Khan, like very different feeling.
Yeah, Wrath of Khan was like a submarine movie.
Yes.
And this is a totally different vibe. And Wrath of Khan was a great submarine movie, and this was a great. It's not quite an action movie.
Yeah, it's like if you draw a line from Alien to Star Wars, It's meandering along that line.
But I
Yeah.
think what this movie is a great halfway point between where Star Trek is now in the movies and where the show used to be.
Yeah.
Like it's not quite philosophical, it's not quite action, but it's somewhere in the middle where like you had the super deep Picard, not being able to deal with his trauma and like him overcoming that thing, but then also chopping aliens to bits with a knife.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually really liked that scene where he's like, unable to let go of the ship. So he's like, no, it's mine. And he breaks his like toy, as she kind of calls it, his
What
little
he
ships.
broke was the previous Enterprise that had
okay.
been destroyed.
Gotcha.
It says extra stuff there.
Yeah, and I liked that moment of, he has this like look of realization on his face that he's acting like a child. And
It
was really powerful.
Really good character
Yeah.
stuff there. And I mean, come on, Patrick Stewart. That dude is the master.
he could talk to me all day, every day.
Like if you do go and watch Star Trek The Next Generation, Ash, you're treating yourself to Patrick Stewart as an actor.
Yes.
Right.
It's some of the stuff he does is amazing.
Yeah, it's a really good series. Although it's fun watching it now in light of, because I had seen Next Generation first and then moved on to the other Star Treks, and it's so not campy but almost campy because the crew of all of the Enterprises has shit like so easy compared to all of the like the lower class ships in the fleet. And like the way they treat problems, they're just like, oh yeah, it's not a problem. And like every other show would be like, oh my god, this is huge, we're all gonna die. And like it takes something ridiculous like the Borg to even be a problem for the Enterprise crew.
That would be great to see Cisco spend a day on the Enterprise. Like, you people have it so easy on this ship. You son of a bitches.
Yeah, because the Enterprise D really feels like a cruise ship. It's like if I had to live on a Star Trek ship, I would take that over everything 100 times, just because they just got these nice leather seats and they've got a holodeck and everything's just really, like you say, there's not a lot of big threats to the Enterprise D.
Yeah, I mean, sure they were under attack, but did you see like the shitty station Worf was at in the battleship?
Yeah.
Like that would look like just dark and depressing and shitty.
Well, there's like no comforts at Deep Space Nine or the Defiant or. I mean, Voyager's pretty
Voyager's
comfy.
a little bit, yeah.
They're away from their families, but they got it pretty nice too.
So, Ash, let's get your final thoughts on this. And I think we're all curious to know, are you interested in watching more Star Trek?
Oh yeah, totally. I think this is I was kind of worried that it would be maybe kind of dated, and thus it would be hard to go back and watch. But this has got me really excited to go back and watch it because it didn't really feel dated to me.
Wait till you get to season 1 of Next Generation.
No.
If you want dated.
Well, give me the skip list.
Yeah.
I'll
It's
get
one of
through
those
it.
things where it's like you have to watch the first season to get all the important backstories that they don't let go of.
I'm going to say I can compile an easy list of the important episodes. You don't have to watch all of 1 and 2.
We should post that.
That might be fun.
Yeah, we can post it if anyone else is interested in getting into Star Trek.
Yeah.
And is a virgin like
There are
me.
some painful episodes.
Yeah.
Like
Nick
this
was saying.
black slime episode.
But that's really important.
It's a very
It
important
is,
episode.
yes.
But
Extraordinarily
it's
important.
such a shitty episode.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I liked it. I definitely want to keep watching more. It just kind of it hit the notes of everything I like about like Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars and all that stuff. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm a fan.
And this movie, you I guess you kind of sum that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would say on a side note though, I would have been so fucking lost if you hadn't explained everything to me in the beginning. So I feel like this was like the best case scenario for me to see this movie because you prepped me for it basically.
Which is a really challenging thing they have to deal with making these movies.
Yeah.
They have to make each individual movie completely accessible. And that's why the Kelvin universe works so well.
Yeah.
Because they could just completely reset everything.
Yeah, and they really I would say they explain things better in those than they necessarily did here.
Yeah.
Because the very beginning, like, you know, he doesn't actually say I was one of the Borg until like way the fuck down the line in the movie. So in the beginning, if you didn't know that, you'd be like, what the hell is going on?
And maybe it would have been a point of suspense because he's having Borg nightmares.
Maybe that's true.
What's happening here?
Yeah, maybe.
It could have worked on that level.
That's true. And then it would be like a reveal when he actually told Lily, and you'd be like, gasp, nah, shock and awe.
I think comic books fight that battle constantly. Like, I don't want to start reading comic books because it's 50 years into the story. And that's where you get like Crisis on Infinite Earths and New 52, where DC keeps rebooting the whole thing. And then 4 years into that, they're at the same point again.
You know, I've been rereading the Harry Potter series, and I was thinking to myself when I was rereading it, I was like, there's no way she's going to like explain what happened in the previous book, you know, or explain this character. And I was actually pretty surprised. I'm on like the third book now, and she does, but she recaps it in such a quick, easy way that you understand, and we move on, and it's fine. And it's like, you know, she'll be like, Harry knew all about the Chamber of Secrets because he had this battle, and it lasts. I'm doing a shitty job right now, but she does like a quick and casual way of like recapping you that it totally works. And I just thought that was an interesting example of doing it well, you know?
It's one of my biggest writing peeves that authors and writers don't know what needs explaining.
Yeah.
And I think that might be part of the reason why you would have felt lost in the first half of this movie is because they explained too many things that didn't need it. Like even the time going back in time, their explanation for it was not the explanation the audience needed.
Right.
It was like
yeah. It was like the technical explanation when all I needed was something simple.
Like,
And
oh my
that's
God,
Star
they went
Trek
back
too.
in time.
Yeah.
And looks
That's
like
what we needed. Not,
Yeah.
It looks like we're caught in the temporal wake. And it's like, what the fuck is that, Data?
I mean, it would have been cool to even have some sort of visual cue to indicate that. Like, in terms of on screen, it was like a fuzzy thing because they were following a ship, but there was no, like, enter
that's true.
warp speed or any sort of visual like that.
The visual cue there, and they've got an interesting challenge with this movie, is in Star Trek 4, we knew they were in 1984 because we know what 1984 looks like because we're in the movie theater and it's 1984, right? But in this, it's 2060. And some people might watch this movie and like, oh, Star Trek happens in 2060. Okay. Like, you don't know because it's our future, their past. There's no immediately like, oh, I know they've gone back in time.
That's true.
It was a very boring episode of Deep Space Nine where it was a two-parter where they went back in time to something that was in our future that I don't give a shit about.
But only like 20 years in our future, right?
Yeah.
They do have the visual of the Earth, but it's all roboticized. Like Florida's got like a weird robot-y branch coming off of it. And the problem with that is that maybe that's what Earth looks like in the 25th, 4th century. What are we at? 4th? Yeah.
But there's an extra layer to that. That didn't tell us that they were back in time. That kind of told us that Earth has changed because they went back in time and changed it in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to get that from that.
We don't know what Earth is supposed to look like in their time normally.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
They had some tough challenges, and maybe they didn't explain them all.
Yeah, they did not.
Some tough challenges they usually explain with one line of dialogue.
So God bless all the parents and significant others that got dragged to this movie in its time. Because the fans loved it. I
think so. I think it's pretty well liked. I think it's pretty far up there. So what do you think, Sam?
I really enjoyed it, but not more than I enjoy the show.
Okay.
And I think
Agreed.
Yeah, I think
Agreed, yeah.
Because it was less of I don't know, something about Star Trek the show has really nailed that sort of 45-minute timeline, and they do a really good job of fitting a story within that. And I feel like when they're given more time, they struggle with kind of balancing problems and it doesn't quite flow as much. Either they focus too much on one problem and it's kind of boring, or then they get too technical and it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So I still...
Yeah, I know it's a story that was born of a TV show.
Yeah, but don't take that sort of criticism as me like not liking or enjoying the movie. I did actually really like it. It's super fun to watch.
Excellent. Brett, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely enjoyable. I feel like most of my thoughts are things that are really, really Star Trek picky and not really about the movie so much. Like the Borg Queen thing, but I think really we've said it like 10 times already. Like a good blend of action and the sci-fi that Star Trek usually brings in. I liked it. I would imagine most people would enjoy this movie, even though they'd be lost for half of it.
I thought the point was don't try to be a good man, just try to be a man.
That was such a Riker line too.
Yeah. All right, so Benj, having seen a lot of Star Trek, what are your feelings on this movie?
It holds up surprisingly well, but some silliness.
Yeah.
I think you just described Star Trek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like totally on the level of Doctor Who where you're like, it's enjoyable, but it's like a little silly, the concepts
Yes.
sometimes.
Star Trek is significantly more grounded than Doctor Who.
I could see that for sure.
However, I would reference you to season 1 of both. And
yeah.
the way you feel about season 1 with Chris Eccleston, Doctor Who,
Yep.
you will feel that in Star Trek
That is
Next Generation season 1.
Very fair.
Maybe we feel differently because the first episode of Doctor Who is actually my favorite episode of Doctor
But the
Who.
main-
But I mean,
Yeah.
the cheesiness that you get in season 1, the monsters that wear human skin and make fart noises,
Oh, yeah.
there's some
No, not
goofy
that.
shit in that season. And also with the first season of Next Generation,
Yeah.
there's some goofy shit.
But Star Trek is timey-wimey, but is not wibbly-wobbly.
Fair. Yeah.
So where are we going to get more of your stuff, Benj? You're a stand-up comedian. You're doing gigs around town in LA.
Yeah, no, I'm at the Comedy Store on occasion. I can keep you updated on my appearances at Sideshow Benj.
That would be
Sideshow.
BENJ.
Correct.
Okay, Sideshow Benj.
Like Benjamin, not like a bench. It's a very common mistake.
People are always sitting
People
on
call
you,
you
getting
Benj?
confused.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought you were a bench.
Treat me like
Usually
furniture.
old people in the park trying to feed birds.
Mm-hmm. They're the worst.
Cool. Well, hopefully we can catch some of your stand-up.
Please do.
Right on. Cool. Well, thanks, Benj, for joining us for this. I think it was fun.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you like the show, this is part of the Laugh Stash TV network of content. It's this podcast and a YouTube channel with video game parodies and a drinking show and a cooking show and some other stuff sometimes.
We got cool stuff coming out soon, hopefully. And you can also follow us on Twitter. You can follow this podcast at Let's Rewatch on Twitter. And I done fucked up, guys.
I was
this
gonna
time.
say.
Oh, we didn't get a picture.
I didn't take a picture. I done fucked
You
up.
can still post one now
I
that people
could.
can see before the release.
But thank you, everyone who's following us and tweeting at us. We appreciate you.
We value you.
You're a tribute to society.
And piggybacking on that, if you appreciate us, you will give us a review on iTunes or Google Play Music because you love us.
Yep, you did it.
I did.
So we do this show every 2 weeks. Make sure your subscriptions are all up to date and join us next time for another episode of Let's Rewatch.
Yeah, next time we're going to be watching Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill.
Oh, no.
Is that the sequel? Is there a Fast Pussycat Kill, Kill, Kill? I forgot the song we should have done. It's been a long road.
No.
From there to here.